30th at 6 p.m. for the utility audit and finance plan for the Armory, I believe. Is that what?
No, what this is a utility audit to look at several items that we've had an outside consultant come in and help us with, in the specifically in the utility billing. If you guys remember, I asked council probably 2 months ago if we could have a individual named John Montoro. We looked for a couple folks, and some folks were retired, didn't have time. But Mr. Montoro, who was working with VML VACO, which is Virginia Municipal League, Virginia Association of Counties Finance arm, came in, and over the course of 3 or 4 days that he was here, prepared for me a draft letter of his findings. And I think anybody can read it and can tell. It's a public document now. It is stamped draft. We can get it as a final document once you guys take a look at it. But there's several items in the utility department that are not great. I think we will find that we can resolve some of these matters. I'll go over them very quickly. One of them was the review of meter readings, and I think what Mr. Montoro found that there were meter readings that were in bills going out incorrectly, okay, without taking a second look at the bill before it goes out. And I think the bills were being run, and erroneous bills were not being caught and were being sent out.
What would cause erroneous readings?
It's my understanding, I'm not a bright expert, but it is my understanding that our system should red flag very high billings, $50,000 water bills or something like that, and apparently that either wasn't being used or was not being consulted, or bills were not being sent out in accordance with perhaps some of those flaggings. I think Brenda, over the years, over her many, many years of experience, I think she would manually go through them all, to tell the truth. And I'm not expecting a manual necessarily, and I don't know if a new person's going to have that kind of expertise and knowledge that their bill shouldn't be this high, it should be this high. But we can certainly do better than what we have been doing in the past. Timing of adjustments.
Like once the red flags were shown, possibly they were just ignored.
Potentially, yeah. I think so. I have not addressed it with the individual who was doing the billing at the time. Timing of adjustments. There were several adjustments that would come through our office for penalty coming off, or interest for an overpayment or an underpayment, and there were multiple adjustments coming through during the month. Okay, that in itself was kind of a red flag, certainly to Jennifer Hardy. And I would see them, and I'm like, why so many? And I'd question one, or if I saw one that looked out of sorts. But what was happening and what's causing Jennifer Hardy a lot of stress, and I think will be improving, was that adjustments were being made and entered after the billing cycle. So they were showing up on the next billing cycle, and that's why we were getting erroneous, again, figures and utility consumption reports, all those kinds of, or the consumption, the billing report. That needs to be done. There needs to be a drop dead deadline when that needs to be done, and all adjustments have to be entered in the current billing cycle and not in the following billing cycle. There will be adjustments, and there'll be mistakes, and there'll be penalty and interest that gets waived because it was an over whatever. But the problem was more that they weren't being entered in the same billing cycle, and that's a layman's term explanation. Billing and
Something that's easy to be fixed.
Huh?
I mean, that's something easy to fix.
Easy to fix, and it's just, you shall do it by a certain date. Yes. Billing and usage adjustments, again, back to the same thing. We have already started on this process. Bright, if you didn't know, today we were down because Bright was working on it. I think there was a mistake with Bright, and so the girls couldn't issue computer-generated receipts today while Bright was working on it, and so we've already started on number 3, so that the adjustments can be properly identified. The town is currently negotiating with Bright to go back, and we have already settled with Bright, and they're making the corrections. Okay. Budget billing. This is probably where I will need some assistance from you guys. We've got a pretty substantial list of people who were inaccurately billed, or were not, the proper term, they may have owed money to the town that wasn't collected. Okay, so we have some people on budget billing that are in the thousands of dollars. Okay, which it should never have gotten that. It was not handled correctly. It's not many accounts. I don't think there's more than 30 or 35 total people on budget billing, and I think you get a report or informational.
One account is too many.
One account's too many, absolutely. And what I would like to ask is that you provide me a timeline when we need to get them resolved. I'm not asking you to abate the bills, but I am asking you to give me at a minimum 6 months, have everybody pay it off. I would also like for you guys to, and not tonight, but consider, since it's just 30 or 35 individuals doing the budget billing, whether we want to continue that process.
I think personally, it wasn't anybody's fault when it comes to the customers themselves. I say we divvy it up and give them a year payment
A year?
and just,
That's what I was thinking.
I mean, it's not their fault,
It's not their fault.
not at all. So let's err on the side
They've
of,
got
well,
the benefit of not having to pay perhaps,
Correct.
and the errors are more to the customer side than they are to the town
Yeah.
side. So, if it's a year, if we can get a motion at the end of the meeting to make it a year, then I'll give Brittany those instructions and
as
she'll start working on it.
for the budget billing, I mean, if we don't see a whole lot, and obviously we haven't proven ourselves that we can operate it,
Correct.
and it could have been
Well,
that it was a, it
We
was,
can operate it.
it was those.
It hasn't been operated correctly.
Maybe this is something we look at when we get our new accountings, or we're shopping for new accountings.
We're shopping for a new accounting system, but I think with the change and the upheaval at this point, I think even Jennifer recognizes we probably need to pump the brakes on it for a little while. It's pretty expensive. I mean, we've got $40,000 saved up for it.
Accounting system.
It'll be over $100,000 to do it, but you know, we're changing meters right now. We're going to do a meter upfit, and so I think Jennifer, admittedly, has done a good job interviewing different firms and looking at the different systems and software, and they know what they would like to have, and that's fine. And I'm certainly no expert in it. She's far wiser than I on the matter, but I don't think with a new person in the utility department, it's time for us to be doing that just right yet.
What I mean is maybe we suspend the budget billing until we make that leap to the new software.
Yeah, maybe that's the case. Then we just continue on with it, and that'd be fine. And but we got to get it together. But before you guys were at Food Line and got accosted by somebody who got a $1,900 true-up correction, I probably wanted to let you guys know and let the public know that if it's a year, so be it. It's a year.
Their notices yet?
No, we haven't sent anything out because I wanted to sit down with you
Let's
guys.
Make sure that we notify them that, look, we know this isn't your fault.
Right.
You get 12 months. It's plenty of time to.
Would you consider doing it at cost?
Okay. And we'll do payment plans on that.
Our fault.
Not good news, but it's, I think, news that I expected.
We had to.
But I don't think there's any misappropriation of funds. He didn't come up with anything like that. It was just probably carelessness and inattentiveness, perhaps. Not, a lack of focus, perhaps. The last item is something different. This is a complete change that he's recommending. And I don't know if Jennifer's ready to do it either. Again, with timing and all those kinds of things. But he is recommending going to an accrual accounting, cash to accrual accounting. And I wish I were a better accountant than I am, but he wants to change the way certain things are reported so that they will automatically, and I'll read them to you, provide oversight control over utility billing, does not keep a running, it currently does not keep a running balance of accounts receivables, and does not provide control over billing adjustments and write-offs. We recommend the town migrate to full accrual method of accounting for revenue, and this isn't something that just started. The town has always done it this way, and that's probably not a good reason why we're doing it, but that's what it was, and it was brought to our attention that he recommends we migrate to the full accrual method of accounting for revenue in electric and water funds. When bills are mailed out, accounts receivables will increase and revenue will be recognized. When payments are made, cash will be increased and accounts receivables will be reduced. This change will help to maintain the integrity of the billing and collection process at the end of the month, and the accounts receivables balance can be reconciled to the utility AR aging report, and revenue for the month can be reconciled to the utility billing reports. And I think that is certainly a recommendation he verbalized to us. Maybe as a goal we make for the next fiscal year or something like that. Okay.
How much was this policy, or how much was this for him to do?
I'd have to go back. It was on an hourly rate. Gosh, I think he told us not to exceed $4,500 or something like that.
And how much, out of curiosity, are we shortchanged ourselves with the utility true up?
I can get that chart, but it's in the
I'd like for us on the committee to get
I'd say it's less than $10,000.
a list of,
I do have the list, and I can
I'd
provide
like
it. But
to
it has names on it, and I ask you not to share the
yeah,
names.
absolutely.
We can do it customer
So,
one, customer
so in
two.
essence, this is actually, I mean, it sounds like personally that it was far more than just the utility billing or the budget billing issues.
Mhm.
So it sounds like 45 to 5,000, whatever it is well worth.
Yeah, it's
Time we
given us a template and a direction to work on.
Yeah.
We changed the combination.
Yes.
Oh, gotcha. Hello.
How y'all doing?
Hello, Sheila.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good. I'll just give you a brief where we're at. We're on just the first item of the discussion, and it's a letter, if you remember. We had a third-party consultant come and look at some of the issues we have in the utility billing department.
Uh-huh.
And he came up with a draft letter that I've prepared for you guys and presented to you guys. He wrote it, and he has about a half a dozen recommendations, one of which we've already started working on.
Uh-huh.
You know, we have a new person doing the utility billing.
Mhm.
She got her first bills out today, I think. And so we're gonna not jump on her too fast, but we had Brighton working on one of these things, and it was a reason why, if anybody asked you, well, Brighton working on our system through a web
Mhm.
activity, we can't be issuing receipts and entering things. So we couldn't give, we were doing hand receipts today in the office because Brighton was on the system correcting one of these.
Okay.
Every couple, 3 years, if you go to the second item in your packet, it's called a finance plan. It should probably be the third or fourth page from this. This is much more layman than what we just read about aging reports and all those kinds of things. This is, where is your cash and where is your cash position? Okay, and what are your obligations? And if you read the financing plan, at the top you see, since I arrived in 2011, the town has retired 5 separate bond issues. When I say bond issues, significant borrowings that we made for water and sewer, and the only general fund project that we had that we retired is for the medical center. Okay. In 2014, we paid off the original electric system improvement project from 1989. And if you remember, that was one of the payments I couldn't make in 2011, and Citizens Bank gave us an interim 2-year financing, and we paid it off in 2014. In 2015, the town made an $83,000 payment to U.S. Bank and retired Series 95 in the area of town, for example, where Eric lives. That was annexed into the town, or boundary adjusted into the town in about 1992 or 93. In 95, 96, we put sewer in, and that paid off that sewer project for those homes back there. In 2018, we made a payment, and it retired a 98 obligation, which was the town's share of upgrading the wastewater plant when the Army dedicated the plant to the town. On May 1st, 2019, the town made a final payment to VML Vaco, who had financed the medical center, and that was paid off in 2019. In 2021, the town made a $103,000 payment to VRA, Virginia Resource Authority, and that paid off. And I read the bond documents. I wasn't here when that one was done. I read the bond documents, and it said for manhole and sewer line replacement throughout town. Okay. Go to the next item. These are the 4 bonded debts that you have currently active with the town of Blackstone as of October 1st, 2022. And I'll read you the principals. In 2011, the town was placed under consent order. If you remember, Eric, you probably remember, for the sewer lines down around UMAC and College and Brunswick, Lunenburg. It was a huge sewer project, and that is what we owe left on that. The original debt, I think, was $2.6 million.
And that's at 0% interest.
0% interest, because it was a consent order project. It was a health issue. Okay, and we make those payments to the Virginia Resources Authority. The money originated at DEQ, and VRA is actually the financing arm that collects it and services the bond. In 2020, if you remember, we did a refinance of the water treatment plant, and we cashed out, and we didn't have to make a payment in 2020, but we amortized over the same period of time, so it'll be paid off at the same time. We started with a $4.4 million balance in 2020, and as of October 1st this year, your principal will be $3,866,000. That does have interest, and that's at 2.55%. That was the refi rate in 2020.
So the interest that's shown on these, that's as of October 1st, 2022 that we've paid.
Yeah, the interest is outstanding. That's shown here. Still owe $670,000 of interest on that money if we pay.
If we go through all
If
the
we
way.
pay all until 2034, I think is the.
So the second item,
Mhm.
the water treatment plant refinance.
That was originally from like 2007 or something like that,
Okay.
when
I'm
they
just looking at
renovated the water treatment
At
plant.
the interest difference from that to the fourth item, it's a huge difference. I mean, you're talking about $1 million worth of interest left on the East End water sewer repairs.
Mhm.
When we do these grants,
Mhm.
is interest figured in to where,
Into the payment.
into-
Mhm.
so that we get our grant based on the interest is included as well, right?
Oh, no. We get principal now, okay, but our rates reflect the long-term payment of the debt. The rates reflect. Now, when we get it, they gave us $3.2 million. And that was to pay for the first and second phases of East End.
Then we have to come up with not only just the interest, but we also have to come up with the in-kind labor, the match and all that stuff.
Well, on some issues, but on this particular one, there was no match for it. You do have match in the DACD grant for first and second phase of East End. They gave us $2.5 million for those two phases. And that paid for the housing, and it's gonna pay for some of this curb and gutter, sidewalk, and all this stuff going on. And that does have match where we've got to, I think you put $50,000 of weatherization in 1 year. I think that, we've got to finish up the curb and gutter because the $465,000 is not reflective of the project, it's reflective of what was left over after the housing was completed. We were entitled to $1.25 million of grant money per phase. After the housing was done, there was $465,000 left for drainage and stormwater and curb and gutter. Okay.
You wanted to know the rate on that?
Yeah, what's the rate on the?
On the refi, it's 2.55.
No, on the East End one.
On the East End, it's 1.35. 40 years though, it's
Oh,
amortized
that's
out.
why it's 40
That's
years,
why.
that's what I was trying to
It's,
figure it
I
out.
mean, you really,
Pretty low.
it makes you really second guess going out and getting all these things, knowing that you've got $1 million of interest that you're sitting on.
If you take 40 years to pay it off.
Yeah,
But since the interest rate is so low, I don't know if I would recommend you guys pay
Correct.
that sucker off. I'll
No.
just pay the 2.5% money off quicker.
yeah.
And then there's a 2016 water treatment plant repairs. If you remember, that was disconnecting the water line on the, or to the tank, the old concrete tank. We ran a new water line back to the,
Main gate.
in front of the bowling alley and that area. And then we put a new booster station when we took one of the tanks off. And this was in response, at the time, we were having some bacteria problems, if you remember, in the water system. We'd failed a couple BACT tests. I think one here and maybe one over at the rescue squad. And when we failed those tests, it was kind of a perfect storm. We had flushed, but we'd also stopped adding chlorine at the old concrete water tank on College. And so there was not enough chlorine residual in the system. And I think Mac Bug had even come up that it was 27 days of water up on the north end of town. And this is intended to refresh the water. Okay. Second page. In 2 years, October 2024, this is what you're gonna owe. So we pay off, on our debt schedule, we pay almost $1 million a year in principal and interest, okay? So you can see they've gone down some. For the wastewater consent order project, it's two payments of $67,000 a year. So we pay $134,000, is that right? 67, 134. For the water treatment plant, I've got all these AM schedules, but the water treatment plant, we've got two interest payments. One 1st of September and the one I believe is in February. And then we have a big principal payment 1st of September, and that is about $325,000. Okay?
So we spend $1.6 million in interest a year in our budget.
That's not a year. No. That's over the life of all these bonds.
Okay,
Either 4
makes me
years or
feel
20
better.
years. Yeah. No.
Thinking, holy cow, we need to
No.
rethink this stuff.
I can get you the annual AM schedules and all that.
Would you think that was a year?
I was like, man, our budget is 14 million.
But it is, our budget does reflect about $1 million a year. If you look at the difference between the 2 years, okay, you can see what the difference is. It's almost $1 million a year that we're paying in penalty, or in principal and interest on those 4 bonds, okay? I will say that there was one other issue, and if you remember, we financed the first phase of East End, $1.6 million of water and sewer replacement with Benchmark Bank at 4.5% over 20 years. This reflects, we took them out and refinanced it at 1.3. So our payment per month or per year is actually less for 3.2 million than it was for 1.6 because of the interest rate and the shorter duration of the AMP schedule. Okay. And all of this can be prepaid if you choose to. I thought it important, and I presented before the lease loan obligations. If you remember, we're pretty active with USDA every year, and we go to them and we get them to help finance equipment, and they periodically are very gracious with grant money. For example, those 2 dump trucks, we received, I think, a $150,000 grant and a $150,000 loan on those, okay, for example. So USDA does help out a lot. Police car, they'll pay 55% and those kind of things. So typically, any of these typically will be a 55% grant and a 45% loan when we do these, okay? So the first one you got is a fire engine. I think that is the, if I'm not mistaken, the new engine that we got. You can see the loan is a 10-year deal that closed in 32, so we just started making payments on that thing. But that's the engine that the fire department received. I think it was ordered probably a year and a half or 2 years ago. The second one, we have 5-year note on a police car for 2020. We have a garbage truck over 10 years that we received this year.
Will a garbage truck last 10 years? I hate.
Garbage truck's more of a 6 or 7 year deal. 6 or 7 years. Now we may have to stretch it,
Yeah.
but we financed it out. And the
hate
reason we
financing
financed it
stuff
longer.
over the lifespan though.
Well, I'll tell you, the reason I financed it longer is I'm a little nervous about those payments for that ladder truck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it says to be determined.
That baby's gonna be you're gonna have a nice payment on that rascal too.
So we haven't, I mean, we can't solidify any interest rates or anything on that until it's done.
Yeah, I can go back and look at what the actual maximum it can be, because the grant agreement should have that, the resolution, so I can find that for you, but you can see most of these are the 2.1, 2.2% interest rate.
I'm sure
Still
it's
pretty
gonna,
good.
sure it's gonna be up there.
And we paid off 3 items this year, okay? We had a mini excavator for the water and sewer department. We bought a skid steer, if you remember, it's got the grinder on the front and it's got the bucket and all that, that's paid off. And we paid off 2 police cars
Yeah,
from
we paid those,
2019.
paid those off due to the fact that USDA doesn't wanna get over a certain amount in debt with us, correct?
No, they're fine with us.
Okay.
I paid them off because the bucket truck payment. Or the ladder truck payments. I wanna make sure I've got
It's
the.
not a budget truck.
Huh?
It's not a budget truck.
Not a bucket truck.
It's not a budget truck.
It'd be a whole lot less money for a bucket truck. So, no, in anticipation of an exceptional amount of making payments, I wanted to get payments off that we could then say those payments could be applied towards the bucket truck. That's
Well, it's good to see all of what we owe in one page, just so that we can
What you
know,
owe.
instead of us just randomly going, oh yeah, let's go buy another digger derrick truck or whatever it be.
With the ladder truck, you owe $970,000, is that right? When the ladder truck gets here, so that,
And just make it clear that 750,000 of that, or $800,000 of that is for emergency services.
that's right. Okay. Reserve funds. We are actually down a little bit. We used some of the money to make some payments for the VUMAC project, and then we'll get that money back, but we've got about $3.55 million in reserves today. It's 3,548, okay?
That includes armory money though.
Yeah, that's just undesignated money, okay? But we designated it for the reason we need to have a cap. We don't just need an unlimited revenue stream. I don't think it's fair to citizens, we don't need it. At some point, you gotta sit back and say, all right, we got enough in the bank. I think the county always gets a lot of chatter back and forth. You got so much in the bank, and we use a methodology. And we set that methodology up 5-6 years ago when we first started doing this. And the methodology is for the general fund. And for the purposes of this report, everything other than water, sewer, and electric is general fund. So airport, armory, any of that kind of stuff. And it's inflated this year a little bit because you've got the armory in there. Over $2 million of spending that typically isn't in the budget, okay? I did not back that out, but if I did, the number would be less, okay? But I factored that the 3.7 will be in place by October 1st, which is our reserve amount that we have, okay? That 3.7 of that amount, and I didn't use potentially good accounting practice, what I did is I took the total budget and multiplied it by that portion which is general fund, and it came out to about 58% of our total budget is general fund, and I took 58% of our reserve funds and applied it to the general fund. Okay? That methodology worked for me in my brain, but you may look at some reports and say, in our audit, there may be cash positions that reflect differently with cash on hand, that sort of thing. Okay? So one, general fund reserve, we can say are covered. Electric fund. With the electric department, I think we use 120 days of operating expenses, and that's based on American Public Power Association recommendations. They actually helped us and did a little survey. Because your budget this year is $4,685,000. The target amount for the reserve would be $1.561 million. And right now, because again, I went to the portion of the budget that is electric is about 24% of your total budget. I took 24% of the reserves and stuck it there, so you're short, about $400,000 short.
So you say that you don't feel like we should be accumulating over and above those amounts. So what, after we reach those amounts, what do you see happen?
Well, I think that's where capital improvements come in and things like that, paying off debt. And I've got some recommendations in the back of your plan. I don't recommend just frivolously spending money, obviously. But I think you got to sit back and say, all right, what are the other things we have to do? And I can tell you, there's plenty of stuff that you need to put your cash to that you're not, okay? Water and sewer fund represents 18% of your total budget. And at 18% and 180 days of expenditure based on Roland Cooch, who's with that important company, that reserve fund amount would be $1.8 million. Remember, there's $1 million water and sewer and storm project going on South Main Street as well. That should be also reflected in the general fund. I apologize because it's primarily a street project. So that skews your number again, but I took the total budget and give you a snapshot as of October 1st, 2022. You can always argue I can take out big capital projects and reduce the figures and that sort of thing, but your budget was over $19 million this year. And part of it was because the armory is included in there. You can see with water and sewer, your reserve fund is $1 million short. Okay. Depreciation, this is where you need to put your money. Okay, if you got extra money, this is where you need to go. Every year our auditor in the audit gives us a depreciation cost for the water, sewer, and electric primarily. Okay, we also have depreciation obviously with the buildings and rolling stock and that sort of thing, but the primary depreciation that we have as reflecting the audit is water, sewer, and electric. Okay, water, sewer, and electric.
It's $1 million.
Yeah, excuse me, it says FY '21. The reason I'm using the '21 audit because it's the most recently completed. The '22 audit isn't finished, so I'm using the fiscal year '21 audit, and you can see what your depreciation in your water, sewer, and electric are. $165,499 in the electric, and $827.09 for the water and sewer. And we've got $65,000 sitting in the account right now for depreciation. Now, we've drawn it down this year, and part of it was paying off some of those pieces of equipment for the water and sewer department. Part of it was that water line that we did on Harris Street. So we have chiseled away at the amount we had set aside.
So you're saying that amount should be $1 million
A year.
a year?
A year. And we're not doing $1 million a year, okay? If you wanna find a place, and what we use depreciation charges for, this year we used to pay off equipment, leases, saving interest, and getting those monies available for pay the bucket truck payments, ladder truck payments. And we did some smaller water and sewer projects that we don't. Harris Street, we did 400 feet of water line over there, things like that, okay? There's about $50,000 in the sewer, and about $15,000 in the electric, okay?
That's definitely where it needs to go.
That's where you need to put your money if you got some extra, okay? In addition, you have unfunded liabilities, and when I say unfunded liabilities, there's not a cash position supporting them, and that's, what did we say, $193,000 of leave. If everybody in town finally just folded up the tents and said, all right, I'm leaving and I want you to pay my vacation and sick leave and comp time, the town potentially could have to come up with as much as $193,000. It's unrealistic, but you have that much leave on the books, okay?
We have zero
Set
saved
aside.
up for that.
Zero set aside. It's very similar to your water meters and water meter deposits or electric deposits. We have those fully funded. That cash is on hand. We did that several years ago and we've just kept that aside, okay? Capital obligations, and I left this on here from the last time. In 2015, we did a water study, what it would cost to replace the water system at Fort Pickett. And at the time, it was about a $16 million project. In addition, and I probably should add that, I will make the addition to it, you know, we're looking at some pretty big water improvements at the reservoir and the line work going back to the treatment plant. We received notice from the health department, we were not funded in the first round. There's a second round in September, and we'll find out whether we're funded in that one, okay? But this is the capital improvement as requested, not as approved or earmarked or budgeted, but those are the capital activities that the department heads have asked for. Is it a wish list? Yeah, it's a wish list. But there are some things on there that take some precedent, like replacing the chlorine systems at the treatment plant. Right now, we're using a gas canister or gas cylinder, and we really want to get away from that. If one of those bust open, we've got some issues. And Tanner Farmville had one leak not too terribly long ago. I think I handed some stuff out at the last council meeting. But those are capital projects
So-
that were,
We go to the last
Submitted.
page, just because I know you've got this next meeting.
okay,
The recommendations you would like for us, if I'm reading the first one correctly, within 2 years, you want all reserves funded, correct?
and we can back out the capital projects.
That's,
That can decrease the amount, but you're looking at about $1,400,000.
and you can get that done.
Yeah. If we deem it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen, okay? Can I do it in 2 years?
At that point, we would start going to try to start covering some of our depreciation expenses.
Exactly what I would do there. And the other one is to fund your unfunded liability. Two other items very quickly, and I'll move. I had a request, via the mayor, but from a citizen who wanted to know what money is earmarked and has been spent for ARPA. We received a total award from the federal government of $3,453,892. So what has been spent to date? To date, we have spent $773,458, of which $550,000 was for reducing utility bills. If you remember, we didn't raise some rates last year. Replacing water meters, we just talked a little bit about that we're going to a remote read system. Okay. And we spent $14,000 so far on it. Armory renovation project, we spent $72,461,000, and that is specifically engineering and architectural buildings so far. ARPA pandemic employee bonus, I think this is something, 2 years ago, I think council agreed because we didn't close, that you guys would give a bonus, one-time bonus to employees.
Go back to number 3 real quick. Under Armory renovation project, it also has Virginia State it's,
Virginia State University.
for some reason I was thinking the police outhouse.
Taylor's bottom water line replacement, this is a PER, preliminary engineering report we needed to complete in order for us to apply for that health department grant money that we're working on. And then, as you know, we're working on an aeration project out at the reservoir. We're hoping that project, which is over $500,000, will ultimately be funded through that health department grant program. But we have used the cash in expectation as Plan B, if we don't get funded, that we're using ARPA money for the bulk of it. Okay. Amount remaining is 2.68. You can see utility rate relief, and I'm using a spreadsheet I think Jennifer prepared at one point, and she still showed $18,000 of utility rate relief that has not been issued. Remote read water meter, you can see that's still $102,000. Armory renovation, 2.177, so that's working off a budget of $2.25 million. Okay, and then the aeration project, that takes up the balance. Okay. So if somebody stops at your grocery store, that's where it's at. $3.45 million goes quick.
Do you need, before we adjourn, do you need us to make a motion to recommend to council to make for those years? Okay. I move that we ask council for us to allow up to a year for those that were not given the correct true-ups.
Correct true up on their
Repayments
budget bills.
to the town of Blackstone, being the fact that it was not at their fault, it was ours.
Second.
Okay, yeah.
So, and this is just issues we had on the account side. We found that the accounts were not trued up.
Gotcha.
And so we're gonna give them up to a year to repay that. And that, we just told them a year just because it wasn't their fault. It's our fault.
And we talked about 6 months, but I think the committee
Yeah.
is preferring to give it
Let's
longer.
err on the side of being gracious that we screwed up, so. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Last item, everybody get one of these, and I'll give one to the rest of the council meeting members. If you remember, we put an application in for the Industrial Revitalization Fund for $1 million.
Okay, yeah, I,
For $1 million, this is the basis of the justification for that cost. As you know, we just talked about the ARPA money, and we were talking that the project for the Armory is expected to be $2.25 million, and I think the referendum actually said $2 million for construction. We have $250,000 grant, also for abatement, that Francis Gilmore's actually drawn up the documents. But in order for us to put that grant in and justify the expected costs in there, we need to show, and I think it's time to release to the town council, I've had this about a week and reviewing it, and I think if you look through the document, the revised cost estimate for the Armory sadly has gone up dramatically, and, it's about $3.8 million now. And this, report is dated August 15th, so we've only had it a short period of time, but it was the basis for what we did, with this additional, grant application. We gotta keep working. We've got more work to do, funding wise and figuring out how to do that. Do I have a crystal ball to expect that the rate will go down or construction costs will go down? You know, I can just tell you this is reflecting a dramatic increase in construction costs from, I think it was early in 2020 when we put the estimate together for the Armory, which was about $2 million, about $1.9 million.
Do our ARPA funds have a time limit?
Hmm?
Do our ARPA funds have a time limit?
2024. Yeah, 2024.
I mean, it was spoken for in the referendum that we have the $2 million to spend, or 2.2 with ARPA. Hopefully we can get this grant
And that'll
Sure.
help a bunch.
that, what, up to possibly $1 million?
It was $1 million. We used $1 million because it didn't require additional obligated match for
Right.
council. That's why
So,
we submitted.
Hey, everything's a start. I mean, if we've got to, you spend your $3 million that we get, and then we figure out from there. I mean, we gotta do what you
Live
gotta do.
within the budget.
Yeah. We don't have $800,000 to just throw at it.
I get it. And if you remember, I presented some tax increases to pay for that thing for $2 million, and they were pretty unpalatable. They were pretty substantial to pay for. But that 3.8 is right there at the very beginning of the second paragraph under executive summary.
All right.
That's all I have. Thank you.
We will adjourn at 6:38, so the next meeting will take place.
7 o'clock.
Well, they got another
We got
committee
another
meeting
Oh, it's another, oh. okay.
right
Or
now
I don't know.
at 6:30.
You can see my office if you want.
Come on.
If you want.
So I guess we need to get out the way, huh?
Yeah, you can go in my office.